Yeah, 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 yeah. So when I came, I decided my playa name is going to be Yes. And then some things happened, and I decided it's going to be mostly Yes. So I want to talk a little bit about the power of the mind in influencing our physiology and our actions. There's an old story about the Baron Munchausen, who was riding around on his horse, not paying a lot of attention, and all of a sudden he went into a swamp. He was trying to get out, trying to get his horse out, and he couldn't. So eventually he held his hair and he pulled himself out. And thankfully he held tight with his legs, so he pulled his horse out as well. Now, of course, that's not really possible, but I want us to think about the mental analogy of this idea that we can pull ourselves from our hair. And I want to talk about the placebo effect as a very general way of doing so. So I learned a lot about life from being in hospital, and my lesson about the placebo effect was no different. So I was in a burn department for many years, and at the time when I was a burn patient, the doctors thought that we could get addicted to morphine and other painkillers, so they limited the amount of painkillers we could take throughout the day. We had a painkiller budget, and we had to space when we want to get more and when we want to get less, and so on. And every patient would track very carefully exactly how much painkillers they've taken so that they know they have enough for the rest of the day and for the night. And I'm slightly obsessive, which means that I not only track the amount of painkillers I got, I also track the amount of painkillers other patients got. And sometimes at night, I would hear one of the patients scream from pain, and the nurse would go and give them something, and they would quiet down and fall asleep. And I knew that that patient had already received all their dosage of approved medication. So I would call the nurse and I would say, why are they getting too much? Can I get some extra too? And quite a few times the nurses told me they gave them placebos. They gave them nothing but IV fluid, saline water with some salt, some water with some salt. And you know, it's one thing to hear about the placebo effect. It's a very different thing to know that somebody in the room next to you is really suffering, to know the extent of the pain that they're having, and to realize they got an injection with nothing and start feeling much better about it. And that made me really wonder about the placebo effect. And when I started studying at the university, this was one of the topics I was very curious about. And one way to think about the placebo effect is like Pavlov's dog. You remember the story. The dog would hear a bell, meet salivation. Bell, meet salivation. After a while, the salivation would come immediately after the bell. The meat was not needed anymore to create the salivation. And if you think about it, what it means is our body anticipates the future. In the dog's case, it was meat, and prepare our own physiology for that future. So if you think that something great is about to happen, you prepare your physiology for that thing, and therefore that thing could actually be better. If you think that something terrible is going to come, you prepare your physiology for this worst event, and this could actually happen. And the most we know is about the placebo for pain. What happens if a doctor comes and injects you with saline water? Your brain secretes a substance very much like morphine. It's an opioid. It's very much like morphine, similar structure. And you get real pain relief. It doesn't come from the injection. It comes from your mind. And we have this ability to basically regulate and change your own physiology as anticipation for the future. Now, sadly, you can't just close your eyes and say, please, 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 can I have some morphine? It doesn't happen. If you say it out loud in some places, it would happen, but if you say it quietly to yourself, it's not going to work out. But if a physician injects you, your body starts acting as if you actually got this substance. So this is the basic idea of placebo, and I just want to tell you about 2 experiments we've done on this. One experiment is about coffee. We serve people coffee. And we serve people coffee, and then we try to see how much they like the coffee and how much they would pay for it, and do they want more of it, and so on. And sometimes next to the coffee, we had all these condiments. And we had all kind of condiments that nobody ever tried. Cumin, orange peel, salt, stuff that nobody wanted. And sometimes these condiments that nobody wanted were in relatively ugly styrofoam cups, and we tore the edges, and we wrote on it with a felt tip pen what it was, what was there, cardamom and so on. So people came, they drank the coffee, they put sugar, milk, whatever needed, and they had these ugly things on the side, but that's it. For other people, we replaced these containers with beautiful glass and metal container, the most fancy we can find. So imagine you go to a coffee shop, and the coffee is the same, and the milk is the same, and the sugar is the same. The only thing that is different is what the condiments you don't use is being served in. Sometimes it's ugly dishes, sometimes it's beautiful dishes. Do you think it would change how you would experience the coffee? Absolutely. People like the coffee, drank more, and they're willing to pay twice as much for this cup if it had nice containers next to it. The next experiment we did, we moved to beer. You see how we cover all substances. We moved to beer, and we gave people a choice. We said, here are 2 small glasses of beer. One is regular beer, and one is the same beer with balsamic vinegar. Please try them both and tell us which one would you like a big glass of. What do you think? What do people prefer? The regular beer, people tried one, they tried the other, they said, give me the regular beer. Then for other people, we did not tell them that one of them had balsamic vinegar. We said, here are 2 beers, 1 and 2, try them both, tell us which one you like more. What happened now? Now the majority of the people prefer the one with the balsamic vinegar. Now here's the thing, balsamic vinegar adds bitterness to the beer. It adds some unexpected taste, and people actually like it. But if they knew about it in advance, they hated it. Right? So this is a negative placebo effect. It's when you think that something is going to be worse, you're actually experiencing it as worse. And then the last version, we did another approach. We gave people the 2 beers. We said, try them both, see which one you like. But before you tell us, so people tried, they said, before you tell us, just so you know, this one had balsamic vinegar. Now, why is this an interesting condition? Because you see, when people drank the 2 beers, they drank them without any knowledge, without any expectation. They drank it in a pure way. But after they drank it, then they got the information. So the question is, what is the way in which information and experience merge together? We already know that if you think about something upfront, ex ante, your experience changes. But what happens if you first experience something? You first drink one beer, you first drink the other beer, your experience is unadulterated by your knowledge, but then the knowledge comes later. Would the knowledge be able to come back and paint your experience? Or would you still prefer the one with vinegar? And what happened was that people preferred the one with the vinegar. So it means that the way that knowledge and experience interact is that knowledge has to come first, and then it changes on experience. But if we experience something first, like in a blind tasting, then the knowledge doesn't play out. That's, by the way, why it's good to go to your kids and say, I'm not telling you what vegetable it is, just try it out. I'll tell you later that this is indeed broccoli or something else that kids don't like. The last experiment I want to tell you about the power of expectations has to do with price. So we gave people painkillers. We connected people to a machine that gives them electrical shocks, and we tried to measure how many shocks people can take, what they can tolerate. And then we gave them a painkiller. And we gave them a painkiller that sometimes we told them was expensive, and sometimes we told them it was cheap. And the question is, would the expensive painkiller works better? And the results were absolutely yes. Expensive painkillers, the moment people think it's more effective, more potent, it actually worked best. The cheapest one, the one that we gave people on discount, actually worked much, much less. So what is the summary of all of this? I think for me, the placebo effect, like nothing else, illustrates the interesting questions about mind and body. You know, what are we really experiencing? How much are we experiencing things in our mental experience, and how much of it are we experiencing through our physical senses? And what is the interaction between them? And what the placebo effect and all the effect of expectations really tell us is that what we expect from the world can actually have a profound effect on what we experience. So as you go around outside to experience the rest of this world and the rest of the world, I want you to think about the Baron Munchausen in two ways. One is that it is possible to lift ourselves from our hair, not in the physical way, but in our mental world. And the other one is that it's also possible to help our friends. In his case, it was a horse, but it's possible to help lift some other people, simple by the force of expectations and believing about what will happen. So thank you very much.